AI being responsible for taking down the channel, and what is coming up. I mean, ever since I have been online, AI is just, it's the new kid in town. We knew about AI, and but it's really just what, the last couple of years that we've been so enmeshed in AI. And now there are creators that are doing all kinds of things with AI. And I'm sure if you follow the letter hack, Matt, you understand that AI is not a friend to artists or music artists, because it lifts their material and they don't get compensated. And the way AI is going, it is moving into a place that we really don't love, right? But I'm starting with the fact, with the data centers, because the data centers are what houses the electronic brains of all this. And I got interested in this, and not just because of Matt, although of course it's quite fascinating, when he talks about it, and he's passionate about it. I got interested because I live in a rural area, and one of there's some big YouTube channels that have made documentaries on data centers. And one of them in particular, and I don't remember which documentary. I have to find it. Well, they showed clips of farm areas and people that live, it was rural Texas, rural farm area. I live in rural Western New York, and it's all farms here. And we have solar farms going in, which I don't love. I mean, I'm a person that I think solar should be energy should be nationalized. People should have solar on their homes. I don't love the farms, but it is what it is for now. But it's the data centers that I think are a way more detrimental in so many ways. And I'm going to go through that today. We're going to talk about data centers, and we're also going to talk about the EPA. As January rolled around, and I call Donald Trump, I call him the orange turd. I can't help myself. I'll try to be as professional as I can here. He took office, and as you've seen, that climate and science is it's really under, it's being attacked. And you don't see climate in the news. You don't see anything about environmental issues in the news very much. If you do, it's lefty channels most of the time, or it's something local that is happening in an area. For example, where I live, there's a gigantic cheese plant in a county over, and that cheese plant, thankfully, is not in my county, but I know people that live there. Well, the cheese plant is now violating the New York State DEC rules, and they say it's an accident, but they're what it is it's effluent, it's discharge, it's but it's toxic to the environment, and it's polluting the streams, and it's killed everything around to those people. The fish, wildlife are being affected. It's awful. So but you may see that in the local news, but you're not seeing a lot of this in national news. And a lot of people really don't understand data centers. And that's why I want to talk about them, but I also want to talk about the EPA, because nobody else is. I don't like Zeldin. He's a failed congressman, to use the orange turds vernacular. He's a failed congressman, and he's a failed gubernatorial candidate in New York State. He's just a failure. He has no expertise in environmental issues. He's a lawyer, so he understands how to get rid of regulations. So we're going to start with the data centers and what is wrong with them. and when I saw this and what happens to the people in Texas, what happened to these people that live in the in the perimeters of these data centers, and they are very large. The noise was insane, and the animals were being affected. It really, really moved me, and I have decided to take up this cause in my county and to educate and go to a county meeting and educate our legislators on data centers in case the big tech companies are looking to use our farmland for a data center here, which would ruin everything because where I live, we call it the Western New York Wilds. And that would not really be too great, would it? And I see a lot of people in the chat, and it's really wonderful. I would like someone to go over to Environmental Coffeehouse and see if I'm live there. I have no idea. So thank you. I'm thrilled to be here because I was supposed to be one of the first people to start a show on this space. And then my channel was taken down, what was it, June 2nd. So here I am in September. And it is great. And I really have to say, the hard work and the dedication of Nicholas, who's the producer, and everybody, everybody that's involved here, amazing. Okay, amazing people. Ben and everybody, Jake, and all of you. I love it. So I'm happy, and thank you for letting me know ECH is live. I have no idea what's going on over there. I'm not going to go over there. I want to start on this. So we're going to talk about the data centers. And first of all, they're big, very, very, very big, use a lot of resources, take up a lot of land, massive energy consumption. And they require so much to power those servers. Now, I'm a hypocrite. I may not use AI, but I'm here. I am a person that has technology. I've got a camera. I'm looking at the phone. I've got screens. I've got a studio. I've electrified my house. So there's a concept called Jevons paradox. It means the more efficient energy gets, the more that will be used. And as a joke in my community, I call myself Miss Jevons paradox because I use more. I have EcoFlow backup battery. I have 2 of them. I have lots of electric things. I've electrified my house, like I said. And so I use more. We use more. So I'm kind of a hypocrite. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I could shut everything down. I almost did when I lost the channel. And I could say, well, screw it. I'm just going to be a homesteader like I am, with a big garden on acreage that I take care of. But I'm not ready to do that because I'm an educator and I worked in higher ed. I was a research administrator, HR director at a university research foundation. So I'm not ready to give up. Even if I did give up my consumption of energy, it's not going to make a difference. So I might as well keep on with it. But I can admit it. Miss Jevons paradox here, and I'm going to get a sash. Jevons. Look it up. Jevons paradox. So I'm sure I am using energy consumption from a data center somewhere. I have high-speed Wi-Fi that was dug into my front. We got rural broadband, and I was really grateful for that because for as long as I've been doing these shows, the internet was so bad in the beginning, and then I had a thing on my roof. I put on some kind of antenna, WeBoost. I had one of those. Finally, they gave us this, and I got the faster for the show because I host people. So somewhere there's a data center, and all these data centers, or many, are tied to fossil fuel based grids. And that's driving the greenhouse gas emissions, which completely have left the vocabulary of this administration. You probably can't even say greenhouse gas emissions around the orange turd without getting yourself in trouble. And Anyway, so they are. And then there's heat. They generate so much waste heat. We're already heating up the environment by leaps and bounds. I have central air. I don't use it that often, but when I do, you go outside, you feel the unit, and you feel the heat that's coming out of the unit. You multiply that by millions and millions of air conditioning units. And as the environment heats up, as the planet heats, more people are going to need air conditioning to live. I mean, there are places where in the UK, for example, the heat is so bad, none of their infrastructure was was built for that kind of heat. So yeah, we're having real problems with the heat. And so these data centers, they're adding, and they need water. Their cooling systems, their air conditioning needs chilled water, and it uses more energy, and sometimes it releases that heat right into the nearby ecosystem, which then heats up our area. I don't know if you've heard the term urban heat island, but these become rural heat islands where the heat is then staying in the area from these data centers. And the water use is insane. Many data centers use millions of gallons of fresh water per day for cooling. I'm in a drought area right now. New York State is in a drought. We have had barely any rain. I'm using my rainwater catchment system that I have on the side of my house now to water everything that's in my garden because I'm afraid to use my one old well pump. I have an old fashioned well pump that I have irrigation all hooked up. I'm afraid to use it. I don't know how much water's left in my, or what's in my well. I don't even know how deep it is. I have to look for that, but it's quite frightening. And we're in a drought. Can you imagine if there was a data center here using millions of gallons of fresh water locally, which would draw from the farms that need it for their stuff, their corn, their vegetables, their animals, which would need it for our homes, which could take it from the water table, which means that, it could drain our water even faster, which is actually happening, and not because of a data center, but it's happening to a friend of mine who has no water and she has to have an entire new well drilled. I don't want that to happen. But these are the things that you have to think about. And I really would like to take it upon myself to have it happen for and educate the people here. So the water uses to me is a big, big issue. I mean, you deplete our local water supply and that's it for the farms. We are the Western New York wilds. You know, I put out water for the chipmunks and the birds, and they share it. So there's also then the air pollution from energy, from the energy production. If these places are powered by coal, oil, natural gas, they are going to drive air pollution. It's going to worsen people's health, animal health, asthma, heart disease, and other health issues. People always forget the wildlife. They always forget that. You're living in these things are being built in farm animals, and these animals are being affected so negatively by all this air pollution. And we already had enough particulate matter pollution from the Canadian wildfires. This year wasn't as bad. 2023 was the worst. It was the worst. I was literally gardening in a mask. And then there's the noise. And this is what really struck me when I was watching the one video. I wish I remembered which big YouTuber made the documentary, because they have money, they could do it, and that's great. But it was the noise, the fans, the cooling equipment, constant industrial noise, and it disrupts everything. These people were talking about how how their farm animals were going crazy and literally dying. Horses were dying in Texas. Wildlife, can you imagine? Wildlife habitats being affected by these data centers. Nobody thinks of this. When you're watching an AI video you're not thinking about all of the ramifications of what that video took to produce to get to you. And everybody forgets about wildlife and everybody forgets about the farm animals, and it's not all human centric. If we get asthma, what do you think? They don't? Noise, but the noise making people crazy, making the animals crazy, the hum. Imagine you live, even if you're not next to it, you still hear a low hum. Yesterday, I was at the vet. I'm fostering kittens, and I'm at the vet, and there was a power thing across the street, with all the, you see what, I don't exactly know what it's called, but it was a power generating area, and you could hear the hum, and it was very small, but you could hear that hum. Imagine a building, gigantic building with these all this metal, all this noise, and you hear it all the time, 24/7. It's just insane, and it needs to go 24/7 because of the fans and the cooling equipment. Then there's the waste. So these servers, their hardware, they replace them frequently. So it's tons of electronic waste, and it has toxic heavy metals and plastics. Where's it going? It's going to our landfill. If it happened here, it's going to any landfill. It's all going to go to the landfill. And these landfills they're getting filled up. Ours is filled. It's a transfer station now. So I go there. I don't have garbage pickup where I live. I go there. I bring my stuff. I know it's getting driven somewhere else by a truck, burning fossil fuels. And then the land use, they take up huge amounts of land, fragmenting the ecosystems and displacing the animals. And it's just awful because it takes clearing forests, wetlands, and it's big trouble in my opinion. And it contributes to climate change. I mean, the demand for cloud storage, which I don't use anymore. I just have an external hard drive. I save everything there. I don't use the iCloud. But as the demand for that cloud storage and AI and streaming, which we're doing right now, it explodes. These data centers, the carbon footprint is expanding rapidly, very rapidly. So climate change, then it drives also, these data centers are part of changing the climate, literally, because they're so big. And the heat that they're exhausting is changing the local climate, drives droughts, heat waves, floods, wildfires, directly harms us. And so localized harms, which I've talked about, I have my notes. I've been working on this for a long time, and I was going to do it, and I thought, nope, I'm doing it on this space. Perfect place. Localized harms, and as I said, we would be affected. Maybe not me specifically because of where I am in my rural area, but people that live right next to large tracts of farmland, and it's always dollar signs. These small rural community legislatures see the dollar signs. It's also the utility costs. And that is a big thing, because another issue with these data centers is that they are not necessarily paying for all their electric use. And who gets stuck with the utility cost? We do. So there's utilities, water shortages, health risks, the wildlife that near the rivers or lakes or aquifers tap for cooling. They suffer from the habitat loss and the declining water quality. So it's not great. Yep. But these are the things that keep our internet running, and we love the internet, and these tech companies, they love to say, they're clean and they're efficient. No, they're not. They're not. And as we said, a lot of it comes from fossil fuels. So that's what I wanted to talk about there. The bottom line, they're not just harmless clouds. They make you think that. But they are industrial monsters. They are just driving pollution and resources and pushing our planet deeper into crisis. There's things you can do, like I am going to do. There's activist things you can, but I'm going to do it through education, and I'm going to do it where I am not putting anybody on the defensive where I live. I just want to educate, and I just want to let them know we will not be any wild anything once you start bringing data centers in. And it's not lost on people where I live that the big cheese plant is destroying the ecosystem all around where it's been built, Great Lakes cheese, because it's toxic. You might not think, oh, the waste from cheese it's toxic. It just kills fish. It really kills. So now I'm going to segue, and I'm going to segue into the EPA because nobody's talking about it. We're all talking about Epstein, which is a huge issue, and the Epstein files, releasing them, which personally to me is a big issue. But the thing is, nobody's talking about what's happening at the EPA, really. How many YouTube channels are you going to who's saying, oh, this is what Lee Zeldin did this week? And I wanted to do a show called Inside the EPA, and there is a fabulous newsletter, but they want quite a lot. It's like $1,200 a year. I don't have it. So right now I'm on my own, and I'm digging everything up on my own. But I don't like Lee Zeldin. And I don't think he's qualified at all. And he's got a bunch of lackeys around him, and they are doing the bidding of the orange turd. It is ignorant. They are driven by the dollar sign. They don't believe. And it hurts me when I think about that. Hurts me. It pisses me off that I think Lee Zeldin from Long Island does not understand the climate crisis. What happened to this guy? He's got kids, but he's a jerk. I don't like him. So what's he doing? There's major things. And on my channel with Antonio, we've discussed this. I've done shows on this, but we're going to go over these right now because there's probably a lot of people watching that don't understand. They want to weaken existing protections. They want to open the door for much more pollution. Now, I'm older. I remember the disgusting smokestacks. I remember the pollution in the Hudson River. I remember toxins. I remember garbage. You couldn't go anywhere if garbage. People used to drive their cars and just throw their garbage right out of the car. People were careless. Back in the days of cigarettes and garbage and all that before the EPA. And the EPA, it came about because people were saying, this is bad. We cannot do this anymore. We can't do this. We need a way of regulating what we're doing to the environment. I mean, the science was clear. We were destroying the environment. The 70s and 80s saw a lot of really great things happen to bring us to where we are now, which is now going away. And we are far ahead of what I remember growing up, but I think it's going to change. So they want to rescind that 2009 Endangerment Finding, which was a spectacular piece of legislation. And that finding, it declared that greenhouse gases like CO2 endanger human health and welfare, underpins much of the U.S. ability under the Clean Air Act to regulate emissions from vehicles, power plants, and Zeldin is proposing to remove that legal foundation, which means it just says, turn on the key and pollute. Corporations, you know what? You can pollute again. You don't have to spend all that money on those scrubbers. You don't have to do that. Now, there's a lot of business that's around clean, renewable energy. There's a lot of business. There's a lot of things going on. So they want to hurt those burgeoning businesses. And I think it's quite sad because no matter what I think in the bigger picture of climate chaos and the crisis, which is I'm not too optimistic about things happening on this planet, we are still here. I have a daughter who's younger. I mean, who might be some of your age, your age. And I don't want to see her future in a disgusting, toxic soup of garbage again. No, I don't. So they'll roll it back, and these will be nullified. And there's the 3031 rules that for reconsideration or elimination. These are the regulations on power plants, vehicle emissions, methane leaks, soot, particulate matter, mercury and toxic air pollutants, water protections, and things like I talked about, like landfills. There are New York State DEC has strict regulations, and I'm glad I live in New York, but I wouldn't want to live in a state that has nothing, that their DEC is basically garbage, because then the landfills could go back to not being lined and could pollute everybody's groundwater. There's a lot of things to take into consideration here. There are specific rules being reconsidered. Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, which is called MATS. That's the good neighbor rule. There's a good neighbor rule about interstate air pollution drift, which means if you are in a state that is polluting the living shit out of things, the whatever, drifts into a state that doesn't want that. Well, there's a good neighbor rule, believe it or not. There's regulations on soot, fine particle matter, rules restricting the industrial pollution of water and wetlands, which is very, very important here where I live, because water and wetlands is where I live. Wetlands, farmlands, all that. They also want to reduce, eliminate, forget about environmental justice. And then, of course, DEI, they killed it and lied about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. I was an affirmative action officer. At my campus, I was responsible for affirmative action, and it was changed to diversity, equity, and inclusion because that's really what it was. So they're trying to mix in that it's a bad thing to hire properly without discrimination. So everything in this administration is being touched. So they just say, okay, well, we don't want to do that. Zeldin, he's reorganizing. I don't even know if he shut down the Environmental Justice Office in DC and regional offices. They had been tasked with addressing the pollution burdens in low income, minority, or otherwise overburdened communities. These are the communities that really get hurt. Besides the farming communities, it is the lower income and the city communities where they put all this shit, like Niagara Falls, which used to have all of the industry, just like Love Canal, okay? And I'm not that far from Niagara Falls. I know a lot of people up there, and it could come back. All of those polluting industries, those Niagara Falls was notorious for the chemical industries. Imagine rolling back all of those regulations, which is what they want to do. Zeldin is a piece of shit. So he wants to deprioritize those EPA programs, like I talked about, the diversity, equity, inclusion. They don't care, He's just a racist at heart. They don't understand they don't understand DEI at all. I could do a whole show on what it is and what it isn't, and it's sure as shit was not quotas. Okay, so he's directed enforcement discretion to align with his interpretation of the core mission of the EPA, which in practice means fewer strict action, fewer oversight, actions, fewer strict ones, especially those aimed at environmental justice or pushing polluters to clean up. And a lot of people that are watching probably are environmental justice advocates or action people, because I may think the big picture is bleak, but I would never tell anybody not to be an activist and not to get involved in some form of activism for your environment. It's where you live. It's the biggest overarching issue of our time is climate and overshooting the planetary boundaries, overshooting our use of resources. We live on a planet of finite resources, and we act like it's just going to go on forever, which is what gives Elon Musk the idea of going to Mars, which is what gives the orange turd the idea of Greenland. They want resources. They want the minerals. They might say they don't believe that the climate crisis is real, but yet they want the minerals. Yeah. They want to delay compliance. They want to exempt these companies and corporations from certain pollution rules. And they're going to say it's under the cost of claims of cost and burden because everything is about money. Everything. So they also did budget and staffing cuts. So it makes it really hard for this agency to enforce the rules. And then, of course, they reduce the scientific staff or research capacity. That weakens further regulatory action. EPA had some of the finest scientists. Big layoffs, which we saw. I think maybe we saw some of that in the news, right? So we're going to have weakened regulatory action. If you're in a blue state like me, New York, you do have the New York State DEC, thankfully, which we have to make sure that New York State stays a blue state. I don't want to see my state lose the gains. And it's not that great to begin with. The DEC is not, they will. I mean, they're also beholden to corporations. We happened to win against a pipeline here called the Northern Access Pipeline. We started protesting that pipeline in 2017. We worked with the Seneca Nation, and I live near the Seneca Nation and the Onondagas. Everybody that would have been affected, it would have gone through and taken eminent domain. It would have taken people's properties. It would have gone underground, and it was all going to go under the Niagara River, the beautiful Niagara River to Canada for overseas. So eminent domain, take our farmland, take our property for that. There is no energy source that is out there that is clean and green. There are energy sources that take a lot of mining, a lot of resources up front, but I would much rather power my house if I had the money with solar, rooftop solar, or put the big solar array in my yard and be off the grid. Because once you do purchase your solar, it's done, it's made. And it could last 20, I don't know, years. And people like to talk about the solar panels falling apart, but they are getting better. Technology in other countries is marching on, no matter what the Orange Turd administration wants to tell you. And they know. I mean, in fact, there is a solar farm going in here, not that far from me. The farm owner is leasing the property to the solar industry. And I'm just thinking it's very red here. I live in a very right-wing community. In fact, the people next door that are only weekend people have a stupid Trump sign on their fence, which I hate. Okay? I hate it. But you think, well, what are they thinking when they see that there's all these trucks, there's all these people with jobs, but once the solar farm is up, there's no more jobs, just maintenance jobs. And where's the power going? We don't even know. We don't know. It would be nice if it was going to be used to power our homes, but it most likely will go down to New York. So, EPA under Zeldin, they're offering industrial polluters, especially petrochemical, chemical sectors, the chance to request exemptions from certain pollution rules or delay compliance under claims of cost and burden again. That's what I'm saying. I have to say it again because this is really bad. Now, I know the medical industry uses a lot of plastic, and they do take advantage of the petrochemical industries, but there has to be a way to regulate them. We just cannot be the Wild West of regulation anymore. Again, it just can't happen. And they want to claw back, they want to freeze the funding for climate and clean energy initiatives that have already been allocated under the Biden administration. And we hear the orange turd. He said it again in the UK. These people are laughing at him. Oh, we're not going to do wind. We hate wind. I know that there are environmental problems with wind. I do know that there are wildlife issues with wind, but he blatantly lies about the generation of energy. He blatantly lies, and Zeldin is just an ass-licking toady lapping it up and implementing the destruction of the EPA. And I would say Lee Zeldin is the near-term human extinction EPA administrator. He's trying to reclaim or freeze $20 billion in grants for what was called the greenhouse gas reduction. It was a green bank type project. He alleges mismanagement, although the critics say that these allegations are weak and politically motivated. You think? Of course it's politically motivated. There is nothing in the United States anymore that is not politically motivated. Everything is politically motivated in this country. Hence why I am called Political Coffeehouse, because I've wanted to do this for a long time. And then they want to pull back the regulatory requirements in ways that reduce incentives for the clean technologies. Vehicle emission standards, EV mandates. I'd love an EV. Right now, I can't afford when I drive a 2017 Toyota pickup truck, believe it or not. I'm one of them. I drive a pickup truck. But I can say I very rarely go out. I only go out when I have to. So, I mean, it's got not a lot of miles on it. And I'll probably drive it for the next, till it has 250,000 miles on it. But it would be nice. I would love an EV, even though I know that the mining is horrible. But I also do know that what was happening was science was looking at ways to make these energies a lot less environmentally toxic. Now, I've interviewed Lyle Lewis, a biologist, ecologist, who wrote a book called Racing to Extinction. And, it's a book everybody should read to understand what's happening environmentally with everything we do, because everything we do, this stupid plastic thing I use over and over, the can I recycle and think I'm doing something good. Everything has an environmental impact. Every single thing. And they want to make it worse. So the Independent Petroleum Association of America, the EPA, they are praising the reconsideration of EPA subpart 000B and 000C rules, which are the methane leak rules and reporting programs. So they've petitioned because they don't want to clean up their fracking act. And even the farms, there were scientists that were working on cow farts. I mean, cow burps and cow farts and all that, things that would make methane lessen. Now, I've done years of shows on permafrost thaw up in the Arctic and Russia and Siberia. And that's not the only methane. I mean, methane comes from everything. But fossil fuels, definitely. Now, the landfill where I live actually has a method. It takes the methane out of the ground and repurposes it. They like to call it green. It's not green, but they're using it. They're using it for energy. I've done a tour over there. The American Chemistry Council and the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, they're pushing for broad exemptions from rules about toxic air pollutants like mercury, benzene, also because they want to, and they're going to. We have to fight this. We have to fight this. We have to call our legislators, local legislators. We have to call our congresspeople, red or blue. We have to take a stand if you want to keep a clean environment. It may seem like we're on the Titanic, but even if we are, just like the show that was before me on here, Do something, even phone calls, postcards, join an environmental organization like I'm in here. I went to a meeting the other night. I am dealing with the data centers, and my friend Debbie is doing PFAS in the sludge that gets dumped and the waste. There's always something to do. Always. Then there's the power utilities and the coal-fired plants. They've lobbied and they've signed letters asking Zeldin to repeal, delay, weaken the rules threatening coal and gas profitability. Of course, it's money. Da-ching. For example, the power sector firms like Duke Energy, Dominion, they've warned that regulations threaten grid reliability and increase costs. So they're using fear porn to scare the average person into saying, oh my, we have these regulations. You're going to lose power. It's going to threaten the grid. Well, where's all your profits? Why don't you put those into the grid? Yep. So many of these companies will benefit when mercury, soot, and air toxics are relaxed. We won't. Wildlife won't. Then there's the automakers in the trucking industry. The American Trucking Association, they praise Zeldin's moves to rescind or weaken the greenhouse gas and vehicles emissions and the tailpipe regulations. That's insane. What are they going to do next? Say, okay, well, forget about seatbelts and cigarettes are safe. They support the rollback of rules that would force rapid shift towards electric vehicles and stricter standards. And that's a shame. Even though I know the environmental that no energy is good energy, really. And I know what those ramifications are. Like I said, read Lyle Lewis's Racing to Extinction if you really want to learn. I still want to see these things happen. And these automakers, there are some of them, they oppose these extremely aggressive mandates. And they're arguing that, oh, they're expensive, they're unrealistic. But China's got the market on electric cars. They're not stupid. Although, I mean, they're destroying so much of their own land for these solar farms, and they are energy intensive. It's an energy intensive country. We made them that way because we wanted cheap shit from the dollar store and Walmart. We made China what it is. Now they're laughing at us. They're laughing at the orange turd. And then there's manufacturers and industrial associations. The National Association of Manufacturers, they've joined in the challenges to the PFAS regulation and drinking water rules. Wouldn't you know? Wouldn't you know? They fear, again, compliance costs. So the hell with the fact that microplastics are in our bodies. In my show on my channel the other night, it was a lengthy show, Last Week in Collapse. I went around the world. It's an incredible show, but I went around the world and I did target and talk about the microplastics and how they're measuring it and PFAS. Don't they know that their children have their brains filled with microplastic now? They don't care because it's if you don't see it, must not exist. No. And people like the orange turd never see anything natural but a golf course. And that's not natural. So it's not abstract. These are real human and environmental and animal welfare consequences. Everything that's happening at the EPA. Increased air and water pollution, mercury, soot, fine particles. These cause these illnesses, cardiovascular disease, developmental harm in children, premature death, which I think they don't care about. What did you hear on Fox? What have you seen on social media that Brian Kilmeade said about homeless people? Just kill them because they're Nazis. Are we allowed to say that on this space? So I'm just going to, because I know I have like 10 minutes, and I'm going to go back and just go through the bullet points here. And more greenhouse gas emissions, and it's going to accelerate climate change, making extreme weather, heat waves, floods, wildfires worse. We're in a drought now. Yes, drought has happened before. All of these have happened, but they are exacerbating. Look at any of the interviews I've done with any of the environmental scientists or climate scientists, and they all say the same thing. Elliot Jacobson was on with me the other day. Michael Mann just wrote a book, Science Under Siege, professor with Dr. Hotez, who is the virologist, immunologist, because they're under siege. They're under attack. Science is under attack. That's why the EPA is so important. That's why I will continue to do political environmental shows and educate and teach people. Because it's very easy to talk about the Epstein files, everybody is. It's very easy to talk about Charlie Kirk, everybody is. Not so easy to talk about Lee Zeldin, is it? It's not so easy to know that we're kind of effed. Because more greenhouse gas emissions are on their way. Now you think about that, and I'm going to go over again the harm to the vulnerable populations, the environmental justice communities, poor, Black, Indigenous, Latinx. They'll see disproportionate impacts. I think of like Louisiana, where all the industry is, where all the poor people are. And of course, the industries are there. And like I already talked about Niagara Falls, That's a big one. We've done shows on that too. There's nothing I haven't done a show on my channel in 9 years on. Under the environmental umbrella, now the political environmental umbrella. That's what I say. There's a lot under the umbrella. And the ecosystem, wetlands, streams, protections being weakened, loss of habitat, the runoff, poorer water quality, and the animals, they suffer. Like what I explained about the cheese plant, where not far from me, it is just terrible. The disability community will suffer. Totally, they will suffer. And I'm in that community, quite frankly. I had to retire medically for my back and disabilities with my back and my autoimmune, which probably was from working in a toxic workspace for 20 years. And that was in New York at a university. So there will be less investment in any of the technology that was going to make life better for people. I can't guarantee it's a solution because, again, Jevons paradox. The more efficient energy becomes, the more you use. But I'm not going to be a doomer here and say we're so fucked, it's not worth it to do anything, because I don't feel that way. And I like to see the science. And I like to see not just the science on climate, although I love it. And we did shows on permafrost and ice with my partner, Jennifer, who has retired off social media for years. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, my friends. And the ice is going. And the first time there's a blue ocean event, which means that the Arctic ice goes under a threshold, there will be ramifications for everyone around the world. And we're seeing it with the jet stream. We are seeing it with the weather patterns. We're seeing it with the flooding. Just go on X and look at Volcaholic. She's on X and Blue Sky. She posts these extreme weather events happening all over the world. Every day, more and more extreme weather events are happening. And you can relate the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, to these things happening. We're all victims of a pretty ugly, disgusting administration. And I don't think any of the administrations have been totally wonderful. This should have been something in the 1960s. They knew. The scientists knew, but the fossil fuel industry squashed it. Some people thought the fossil fuel industry was, or there was, bad actors behind squashing my channel because I made a video called "I Love CO2 Campaign is Dangerous." If you've been on Facebook, you've been anywhere, you see the "I Love CO2." It's a bunch of bullshit. There's a video on my channel I made. And on this right now, I haven't brought in, I'm just learning this software. So that's why I didn't bring in any links. Usually we're very interactive on Environmental Coffeehouse. I make videos and I play videos and show articles and all that. Maybe this will be a little different. I'm handling this just fine with my notes and my work because I take this very seriously. So let's look at numbers before we go. We have 6 minutes. The EPA's proposed repeal of carbon pollution standards for the power plants, it's estimated to result in maybe 1,220 extra premature deaths in 2035. That's a long time out projection. I don't know the science on this. It was from the Environmental Defense Fund, which is where I got those numbers, but 1,100, it's got to be more than this from fine particulate matter or soot. Maybe it's 120,000. People are going to be very sick. It's going to go back. I remember people dying young from all these things. Rollbacks of the 31 environmental and public health rules are projected to cost nearly 200,000 lives over the next 25 years. That didn't have to happen. That doesn't have to happen. But they don't care actually, but I think they meaning this administration, which is really the deep state. They are the deep state. They're the deep state that they warned and they were screaming about. They are the deep state. Another assessment by the AP and EPN the Associated Press found that the regulations currently targeted could prevent 30,000 deaths a year and save $275 billion annually in their fully functioning state. Asthma, respiratory illnesses, it's the tightening the soot standards under past administrations prevented and helped prevent 800,000 asthma deaths annually. Reversing that, well, forget it. Economic costs and savings. There was a lot of savings. The rules and questions are not only about your health. It's keeping the rules. It saves about $275 billion from avoided health costs, environmental damage. They don't care. They're greedy. They're ignorant. And they are preaching or proselytizing their cult viewpoints to a base of people that are so brainwashed. It's not us. It's not left against right. It's them, the oligarchs, the deep state up there, the oligarchy against us, making us hate each other, lying to us about the disproportionate impacts and about vulnerable populations that are going to be hurt. They're lying. And it's very sad. So there we are. We are really, we're really in trouble. Repealing the endangerment finding. Reconsideration of the Mercury and toxic air standards. Weakening the cross-state good neighbor. Rolling back the stricter PM2.5, that's the soot, and ozone standards. And ending or gutting the greenhouse gas transparency, the GHG reporting program. It's a lot of trouble. And I've seen it grow. I saw it wonderfully grow in my life. I'm not young. I've lived a lot of decades, and it's killing me. It's killing me to see it. It hurts. It hurts. I've got 3 minutes. I managed to fill up a whole hour educating you, talking about what's happening. And I don't know what the US EPA website looks like exactly today. Things change every single day. But I just want to say thank you, everyone that came. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Tommyist, and thank you, Thank you, everyone, from my channel and from this space. I really want this space to be successful. The hope is to have 24-hour progressive programming, bring on more left voices to counteract this assault on us, this fight, these lies. The orange turd is lying. There is nobody that was celebrating like they're saying the death of this person that they are Charlie Kirk, that they are using to their advantage to get rid of free speech, which is what they wanted to do. We are all in trouble. That is why spaces like this space is so important. And the more left voices that we can get on for 24-hour programming where anybody can go, like I said at the beginning, go out in the garden, put my headset on, my electronic headset with my phone, and listen to the programming without ever having to change channels, because every hour is another show and all different kinds of shows. That is why this space is so spectacular, and that is why I am in. And I was devastated when my channel came down. So thank you, everyone. Latino and Johnny, thank you, and Rich and Cheryl Josie, because I think you're responsible for getting my channel back. And I will see you guys on Saturday night with Antonio Reed. If you don't know Antonio, he's been with us on Left Past 10. He's a spectacular historian, a wonderful leftist, a wonderful voice, and he doesn't hold back. We're on Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm thrilled to be here. Next week, I don't know yet, but it will be a good show. I promise you, you will learn every week. Thanks for coming. Hi, Kristen Rose and Nina Canadian. Everybody, thanks for coming. Please support this space, subscribe, and subscribe to my channel so I can finally get to 5,000. Wouldn't that be nice after 9 years? Because it's a hard sell. It's hard. And climate is a difficult subject, and environment is a difficult subject. But while we are alive and while we are here, we really need to do as much as we can. And that's how I'm going to end. Thank you, everybody at the this space staff, for making this happen. Peace.